Have you ever noticed how society reacts to those who think differently? Not just a little differently, profoundly differently. Those rare individuals who question what others accept without thought, who stand apart from the comfortable consensus. You see it everywhere, in workplaces, in social circles, in political discourse. The free thinker is first ignored, then ridiculed, then feared, and sometimes silenced. But why? What makes independent thought so threatening? What invisible forces push us toward conformity, and what price do we pay for our collective obedience? Friedrich Nietzsche saw this dynamic with stunning clarity. He didn't just observe it, he lived it. Rejected by his peers, misunderstood in his time, he wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. They don't burn free thinkers at the stake anymore. They do something far more elegant. They ignore them. They label them difficult, arrogant, delusional, and slowly they erase them. Not from the world, but from the conversation. Because nothing is more dangerous than a mind that can't be manipulated. A person who thinks outside the algorithm. Someone who doesn't ask, 'Is this allowed?' before they speak." You might think society wants progress, but it doesn't. It wants agreement, smooth edges, predictability. And the free thinker? They're jagged. They disrupt the narrative. They break the loop. So what happens when you stop mirroring the world and start questioning it? And why does society despise the free thinker so? What's really happening beneath the surface? Imagine standing in the middle of a vast open plain. No walls, no boundaries, no paths. Just infinite possibility stretching in every direction. How do you feel? For most, that limitless freedom produces not exhilaration but profound anxiety. This is exactly why we cling to the comfort of collective thinking. Nietzsche understood that humans are fundamentally social creatures who seek safety in numbers. We developed in tribes where survival depended on group cohesion. To be cast out meant almost certain death. This primordial fear remains encoded in our psychology, even when physical survival is no longer at stake. The surest way to corrupt a youth, Nietzsche wrote, is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. Yet this is precisely what society teaches us from childhood. We learn to seek approval, to mirror the thoughts and behaviors of those around us, to fear standing apart. We absorb the unspoken rule. Conformity brings reward. Divergence brings punishment. And what powerful rewards they are: acceptance, belonging, status, advancement. The conformist receives society's validation, a psychological currency more valuable than gold. Meanwhile, the independent thinker faces isolation, ridicule, or worse. But the herd mentality serves another, deeper purpose. It protects us from the terrifying weight of true freedom. When you accept society's pre-packaged thoughts, you're relieved of the burden of thinking. When you follow established paths, you're freed from the anxiety of choosing your own way. When you embrace collective values, you escape the responsibility of creating your own meaning. This is why so many people, when confronted with a genuinely original thinker, respond not with curiosity, but with hostility. The free thinker doesn't just challenge specific ideas. They challenge the entire framework that provides psychological security. They remind us of a freedom we've willingly surrendered. But conformity isn't simply a psychological tendency. It's actively enforced through sophisticated social mechanisms that shape thought itself. Look around you. From education systems that reward memorization over questioning, to media landscapes that present narrow bands of acceptable opinion, to social networks that create echo chambers, we live inside a machinery of conformity more pervasive than any before in human history. Nietzsche foresaw this development. In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. This machinery operates through subtle but powerful forces. First, Language itself constrains thought. The concepts available to us shape what we can think. When free thinkers introduce new ideas or challenge established meanings, they disrupt the very foundation of collective understanding. Second, social validation constantly reinforces conformity. From childhood, we learn to judge our thoughts by how others receive them. The questioning child quickly learns which thoughts bring approval and which bring discomfort. Third, identity becomes entangled with belief. People don't merely hold opinions, they become their opinions. To challenge someone's beliefs is to challenge their very sense of self, triggering defensive reactions far beyond the specific idea being questioned. Fourth, institutions systematically marginalize divergent thinking. Educational systems teach students what to think, not how to think. Corporate structures reward those who implement established wisdom rather than question it. Political systems reduce complex realities to simplified partisan positions. And finally, fear, the most powerful mechanism of all. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of punishment, fear of the unknown. As Nietzsche observed, fear is the mother of morality, and of conformity as well. These forces don't operate through conspiracy. They emerge naturally from human psychology and social organization. They're all the more effective because they remain largely invisible, shaping thought while creating the illusion of freedom. The truly independent thinker disrupts this machinery. They expose its workings. They remind others of possibilities beyond the narrow channels of acceptable thought. And for this, they become targets. So what makes free thinkers so threatening? Why does society react to them with such predictable hostility? It's not simply that they challenge specific ideas, it's that they challenge the very foundations upon which social order rests. When you think for yourself, truly for yourself, you commit an act of psychological rebellion. You implicitly declare that you don't need external validation to determine what's true. You demonstrate that it's possible to step outside consensus reality and survive. You become living proof that the emperor might have no clothes. Nietzsche understood this radical nature of free thinking. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. The free thinker triggers several profound threats. First, they threaten existing power structures. All hierarchies depend on shared beliefs to maintain their legitimacy. When those beliefs are questioned, the foundation of authority itself begins to shake. Second, they expose uncomfortable truths. Societies function through necessary fictions, noble lies that maintain order. The free thinker who points to these fictions disturbs the comfortable sleep of the collective. Third, they awaken responsibility in others. When someone demonstrates authentic thinking, they implicitly challenge others to do the same. But this means facing the terrifying prospect of thinking for oneself, of taking responsibility for one's own existence. And fourth, perhaps most threatening of all, they embody freedom. In a world where most have traded freedom for security, the truly free individual serves as a constant reminder of what has been sacrificed. This is why society's reaction follows a predictable pattern. First, ignore the divergent voice. If that fails, ridicule it. If ridicule fails, demonize it. If demonization fails, attempt to co-opt or reinterpret it to fit within acceptable boundaries. Only when these efforts fail does genuine engagement become necessary. And even then, the engagement often serves primarily to define why the divergent thinker is wrong, dangerous, or morally suspect. As Nietzsche observed, the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. But perhaps you're thinking, surely this is exaggerated. People think for themselves all the time. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information, of constant debate and discussion. Aren't we beyond such primitive herd mentality? Look closer. What passes for independent thinking is often just alignment with a different herd. Political polarization doesn't represent true independent thought. It merely offers a choice between pre-packaged worldviews. Social media doesn't facilitate genuine exploration. It creates deeper entrenchment in existing beliefs. Most people who believe they think freely are actually expressing opinions they've absorbed from their preferred sources of authority. They confuse the freedom to choose between available options with the freedom to question the options themselves. True independent thinking goes deeper. It questions foundational assumptions. It remains open to changing core beliefs. It values truth over comfort, growth over certainty. And this kind of thinking is rare, not because humans lack the capacity, but because the social cost is so high. Consider how many thoughts you've censored today, how many observations you've left unspoken because they didn't align with what's acceptable, how many questions you've swallowed because asking them might make others uncomfortable. This self-censorship isn't just about external safety, it's about maintaining internal comfort. Cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that comes from holding contradictory beliefs, is genuinely painful. Most people instinctively avoid it by conforming their perceptions to established beliefs. As Nietzsche wrote, "Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed." This is the silent tyranny of conformity. Not that we're forbidden to think differently, but that we forbid ourselves. We become our own censors, our own jailers, policing the boundaries of our thoughts before they even fully form. And we call this freedom. The cost of this collective surrender is incalculable. At the personal level, conformity diminishes our humanity. When we outsource our thinking, we sacrifice what makes us distinctly human, our capacity for independent thought, for creativity, for authentic self-creation. Nietzsche saw this clearly. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. At the societal level, conformity stifles innovation and adaptability. The most valuable solutions often come from perspectives outside mainstream thinking. When divergent voices are silenced or marginalized, we lose their potential contributions. And at the civilizational level, conformity can lead to catastrophic failures. History is littered with examples of societies that destroyed themselves by adhering to collective delusions. When critical thinking becomes rare, when questioning becomes taboo, when certainty replaces curiosity, disaster often follows. Perhaps most tragically, conformity prevents us from seeing reality clearly. Our collective beliefs become a filter through which we perceive the world, distorting our vision in ways we rarely recognize. We mistake our cultural constructs for natural laws, our temporary arrangements for eternal truths. As Nietzsche put it, there are no facts, only interpretations. But not all interpretations are equal. Some bring us closer to reality, others insulate us from it. Without free thinkers to challenge our shared interpretations, we risk becoming trapped in increasingly distorted perceptions. This is the ultimate price of conformity, not just that we think alike, but that we become incapable of thinking otherwise. Not just that we choose comfort over truth, but that we lose the ability to distinguish between them. So how does one become a free thinker in a world built for conformity? What separates those who break free from those who remain comfortably chained? It begins with awareness, recognizing the invisible forces that shape thought. Understanding that many of your most deeply held beliefs were not chosen by you, but absorbed from your environment. Seeing how your mind has been molded by education, media, culture, and social pressure. This awareness creates the necessary distance between yourself and your thoughts. You begin to have thoughts rather than being had by them. The next step is radical honesty. The courage to admit what you don't know, to question your certainties, to follow evidence even when it leads to uncomfortable conclusions. This honesty extends inward as well, acknowledging your biases, your fears, your tendency toward conformity. Then comes the practice of questioning. Not just questioning others or external authorities, but questioning yourself. What do I really know? Why do I believe this? What assumptions underlie my thinking? What would it mean if I'm wrong? This questioning isn't cynical or nihilistic. It's not about rejecting everything, but about examining everything, about developing the capacity to think critically while remaining open to wonder and possibility. Nietzsche called this the transition from camel to lion to child in his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The camel carries the weight of tradition and accepted wisdom. The lion says no to external authority and creates space for freedom. The child then says yes to new creation, approaching life with fresh eyes. But this transformation demands courage, the willingness to face social disapproval, to stand apart when necessary, to endure the discomfort of uncertainty. As Nietzsche wrote, the secret for harvesting from existence the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment is to live dangerously. Living dangerously doesn't mean recklessness. It means embracing the risk inherent in authentic thinking, in questioning, in creating your own meaning rather than accepting what's given. Yet here we encounter a paradox. True free thinking isn't about isolation. It's not about cutting yourself off from others or declaring yourself superior to the collective. The truly free thinker understands their interdependence with others, their embeddedness in culture and history. They don't reject all influence, but become conscious of it. They don't refuse all guidance, but choose their teachers wisely. This is what Nietzsche meant when he wrote, "Independence is for the very few. It is a privilege of the strong." Strength here doesn't mean domination over others. It means the capacity to think for yourself while remaining engaged with community. It means filtering external influences through your own critical faculties rather than absorbing them unconsciously. The free thinker isn't fighting against society. They're fighting for a better society, one that values truth over comfort, that embraces diversity of thought, that encourages genuine exploration rather than mere affirmation of what's already believed. They understand that human flourishing requires both individual freedom and collective cooperation, both the courage to stand apart and the wisdom to recognize our shared humanity. This is the ultimate paradox, that true independence isn't about separation, but about conscious connection. Not about rejecting all authority, but about choosing wisely whom and what to trust. Not about isolated self-sufficiency, but about authentic engagement. A choice becomes clear, not just for you as an individual, but for us as a society. Will we continue to sacrifice truth for comfort, authentic thinking for social acceptance, genuine exploration for the security of the known? Or will we find the courage to think for ourselves, to question our certainties, to remain open to growth and discovery even when it's uncomfortable? Nietzsche believed that this choice would define the future of humanity. In a world increasingly dominated by mass movements, technological control, and psychological manipulation, the capacity for independent thought becomes not just valuable, but essential for human freedom. The free thinker isn't just engaging in a personal act of liberation. They're preserving something precious for all of us: the capacity to see clearly, to think deeply, to remain fully human in an age that increasingly treats humans as predictable, programmable machines. So what does this mean for you, watching this now? It means recognizing that true freedom begins in the mind. That the most important revolution isn't political but psychological. The revolution of becoming conscious of how your thoughts are shaped and choosing to shape them differently. It means having the courage to question not just what others tell you, but what you tell yourself. To examine your most cherished beliefs, to remain open to evidence that might change your mind. It means accepting the discomfort of uncertainty, the loneliness that sometimes comes with refusing to follow the crowd, the responsibility of creating your own meaning rather than accepting what's given. But it also means discovering a deeper kind of freedom than most will ever know. the freedom to see reality more clearly, the freedom to create yourself rather than being created by external forces, the freedom to live authentically in a world of artifice. As Nietzsche said, he who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. The journey toward free thinking isn't easy. It's a process of constant growth, of falling and getting back up, of losing your way and finding it again. But it's also the most profoundly human journey possible, the journey toward becoming fully yourself. The world doesn't need more followers. It needs more individuals with the courage to think for themselves, to question, to explore, to create. It needs you, not the you shaped by conformity, but the you that emerges when you find the courage to think freely.